Welcome to the Galactic Combat Arena, where the universe's most dangerous beings come to die spectacularly for your entertainment. At least, that's what the brochure says. The reality is more like a cosmic WWE event run by beings who take themselves way too seriously. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted blob creatures, boomed Vextar, the arena's chief announcer, his 4 eyes gleaming with theatrical malice. Vextar was a Zephyrian, which meant he looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a game show host and given the result delusions of grandeur. Today, we witness a battle that will echo through the ages. The crowd of alien spectators roared their approval. While some roared, others gurgled, clicked, or made sounds like dying air conditioners. The important thing was they were excited, and more importantly, they had paid premium credits to watch someone get brutally murdered. In the blood-soaked sands of our arena, Vextar continued, gesturing dramatically with all 6 of his arms, we present a creature so pathetic, so utterly doomed, that the betting pools have already closed. From the backwater planet called Earth, we give you the human! A metal door creaked open at one end of the arena, and out shuffled Jake Murphy. Jake was exactly the kind of human you'd expect to find fixing the air conditioning in a space station's maintenance bay, not fighting for his life in front of thousands of bloodthirsty aliens. He was average height, average build, with the kind of face that screamed, I fix things and mind my own business. He wore a standard-issue maintenance jumpsuit that had seen better decades, work boots that squeaked slightly when he walked, and carried a lunchbox that looked suspiciously normal for someone about to face mortal combat. Most importantly, there was a small orange lump poking out of his chest pocket that occasionally twitched. Behold the terror of humanity, Vextar shrieked, apparently not noticing that Jake looked about as terrifying as a slightly confused janitor. Witness as this apex predator. Wait, what is that thing in his pocket? Jake had stopped in the center of the arena and was now gently extracting a small orange tabby cat from his jumpsuit. The cat stretched, yawned, and looked around at the cheering crowd with the sort of bored disdain that only cats can truly master. This is Mr. Whiskers, Jake said into his arena-issued microphone, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who was really supposed to be somewhere else right now. He gets cranky if I leave him alone too long. The crowd fell silent. This was not the bloodthirsty war cry they had been expecting. Did the human just bring a pet to his own execution? Whispered Vextar to his co-announcer, a blob creature named Glorp, who communicated through interpretive color changes. Glorp flashed a confused purple cellar pattern that roughly translated to, I think so, and I'm having an existential crisis about it. Vextar, being a professional, decided to power through this unexpected development. After all, the show must go on, especially when you've sold overpriced snacks to a stadium full of bloodthirsty aliens. Ahem, yes, well, he announced, his voice climbing back to its usual dramatic pitch. Perhaps the human's companion will provide additional sustenance for our champion. Speaking of which, let me introduce the creature that has struck fear into the hearts of warriors across 17 star systems. The opposite end of the arena began to rumble. Smoke machines activated, dramatic lighting strobed, and speakers blasted what could generally be called music but sounded more like someone torturing a synthesizer. The alien crowd went absolutely wild, tentacles waving, mandibles clicking, and various breathing apparatus whistling with excitement. Witness the terror that is the Void Ripper, Vextar screamed over the cacophony. This Class-3 death beast has defeated the mighty Gorlax warriors of Titan 7. It has consumed the crystal bones of the ethereal monks. It has literally scared 3 different species into extinction just by existing. A massive gate slowly cranked open, revealing nothing but ominous darkness beyond. The crowd held its collective breath, or whatever passed for breathing in their various anatomies. Standing 12 feet tall, with razor claws that can slice through battleship armor, possessing 4 rows of teeth designed by evolution specifically for maximum carnage, the Void Ripper has a perfect record of 237 victories, 0 defeats, and 0 survivors. Jake, meanwhile, had set Mr. Whiskers down on the sandy arena floor, and was now unwrapping what appeared to be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The cat immediately began investigating the sand with the intense focus cats reserve for things that might be interesting enough to knock over. Excuse me? Jake called out, raising his hand like a student asking to use the bathroom. Is this going to take much longer? Because I'm supposed to check the filtration systems in Sector 12 after lunch, and if I'm late again, Rodriguez is going to have my head. The crowd stared at him in stunned silence. Here was a creature facing imminent death, and he was worried about his performance review. The human appears to be Broken, Vextar whispered to Glorp, who had turned a sickly green color that meant roughly, "This is not in my job description." A low, bone-chilling growl echoed from the darkness beyond the gate. The Void Ripper was coming, and it sounded exactly as pleased as you'd expect a creature called the Void Ripper to sound. What emerged from the shadows was, by any reasonable measure, absolutely terrifying. The Void Ripper stood 12 feet tall on 4 muscular legs, each ending in claws that looked like they'd been forged in the heart of a dying star. Its body was covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light itself, and its head featured not 1, not 2, but 4 separate rows of teeth that gleamed like polished daggers. 6 eyes burned with predatory intelligence, and when it breathed, small wisps of what might have been actual void essence curled from its nostrils. The crowd erupted in appreciative terror. This was exactly what they'd paid to see. "Yes," Vextra shouted, his voice cracking with excitement. "Look upon the face of death itself. Witness the apex of engineered destruction. The Void Ripper approaches its prey." The beast stepped into the arena with the confident swagger of something that had never, not once, encountered a problem it couldn't solve by eating it. Its 6 eyes locked onto Jake, who was still focused on his sandwich and completely failing to look even slightly concerned about his impending doom. "Oh, hey there, big guy," Jake said, glancing up briefly before taking another bite. "Nice teeth." The Void Ripper's stride faltered slightly. In its extensive experience, prey usually screamed at this point, or at least showed some basic survival instincts. This creature was complimenting its dental work. But then the beast's attention shifted, and everything changed. Mr. Whiskers had finished his sand inspection and was now sitting in that perfect cat loaf position, orange fur glowing in the arena lights, tail wrapped neatly around his paws. He looked up at the approaching monster with the kind of mild interest cats show when they're deciding whether something is worth their time. The Void Ripper stopped dead in its tracks. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the most feared predator in the known galaxy and a slightly chubby house cat stared at each other across 10 feet of arena sand. The crowd held its breath. Vexter's mandibles hung open in confusion. Then the Void Ripper did something that had never happened in the 200-year history of the galactic combat arena. It lay down. Not in a hunting crouch, not in preparation to pounce, it simply lay down, like a massive, scaly dog, and began making a sound that could charitably be described as purring, if purring sounded like a freight train being gently massaged. "What," said Vextar, his voice barely a whisper, "in the name of the cosmic void is happening?" Mr. Whiskers approached the now prone death machine with the casual confidence of a creature who had never met a problem he couldn't solve by being adorable. The Void Ripper's purring intensified. When the cat was close enough, the beast very carefully, very gently, nudged Mr. Whiskers with its enormous snout. Mr. Whiskers head-butted it back. The crowd went absolutely silent. "Well," Jake said, finishing his sandwich and dusting crumbs off his hands. "That's new. Usually takes him at least 5 minutes to make friends." The silence in the arena was so complete you could have heard a pin drop, assuming pins made sounds when dropped in the vacuum of space, which they don't, but you get the idea. 70,000 alien spectators stared in complete bewilderment as the galaxy's most feared predator continued to purr like a broken engine while nuzzling a house cat. "Human!" Vextar finally managed to shout, his voice an octave higher than usual. "What sorcery is this? What dark magic have you used to bewitch our champion?" Jake looked up from his lunchbox, where he was now retrieving what appeared to be a juice box. "Magic? Oh no, nothing like that. Mr. Whiskers just has this effect on things. Always has. Ever since I found him on Kepler's station." He punctured the juice box with its tiny straw and took a sip. "See, most people don't realize that feline pheromones work across like 90% of known species. Something about the molecular structure triggers a universal calm response. Pretty fascinating stuff, actually." Vextar's eyes bulged. "You're telling me that small orange creature is some kind of biological weapon?" "Order weapon." "Mr. Whiskers?" Jake laughed, nearly choking on his apple juice. "He's about as weaponized as a throw pillow. He once got scared by his own reflection and hid under my bed for 3 days." The Void Ripper, as if to prove Jake's point, had now rolled onto its back so Mr. Whiskers could properly inspect its armored belly. The cat seemed to approve and began that slow blink thing cats do when they're marking their territory, as acceptable for now. "But I'm getting ahead of myself," Jake continued, settling down cross-legged in the sand like he was having a picnic instead of participating in a death match. "See, there's been a bit of a mix-up. I'm not supposed to be here at all. Vextar leaned forward in his announcer's booth. Explain, now. Right, so my name's Jake Murphy, and I'm a xenobiologist with the Terran Research Division. I was supposed to be on the science vessel Curiosity studying the behavioral patterns of Class-3 predators in controlled environments. You know, for research purposes. Understanding how they interact with different stimuli, that sort of thing. Jake scratched Mr. Whiskers behind the ears, causing the Void Ripper to rumble even louder, with what could only be described as jealousy. But apparently there was some kind of paperwork snafu down at Central Processing. They mixed up my assignment with Dr. Maria Rodriguez, who was supposed to be your gladiator this week. Rodriguez? Vextar sputtered. Yeah, she's this hardcore combat specialist from the Mars colonies. Probably would have given you quite a show. Instead, you got me and Mr. Whiskers. Jake shrugged. Bureaucracy, am I right? The implications of this hit the alien audience like a meteor strike. They hadn't paid to watch a scientist accidentally stumble into an arena with his therapy cat. They wanted blood, violence, and the satisfying crunch of bones being demolished. A low murmur of discontent began rippling through the stands. In the VIP section, a delegation of Plutonian war merchants who had bet heavily on a quick human death were starting to look distinctly murderous themselves. Vextar could feel his career flashing before his eyes. In the entertainment business, there were few things worse than an anticlimactic finale, and this wasn't even climactic enough to be called anti. This is unacceptable, he declared, his voice booming across the arena. The crowd demands satisfaction. The show must go on. He frantically pressed buttons on his control panel, communicating with the arena's beastmasters below. Release the backup champions, all of them. If one death beast cannot handle a human and his emotional support animal, then we'll see how they fare against 4. Jake looked up from where he was now sharing crackers with the Void Ripper, who was delicately taking them with the very tips of its razor claws. 4? That seems like overkill. Mr. Whiskers is friendly, but he's not exactly social with big groups. Silence, Vextar roared. The triple threat protocol has been activated. Witness the power of the Shadow Mob, the Bone Crusher, and the Stellar Devourer. Let's see your pet handle that, human. 3 more massive gates began grinding open around the arena's perimeter. Jake sighed and reached for another sandwich. Well, Mr. Whiskers, he said to the cat, who was now being very gently groomed by a creature that could literally bite through starship hulls, looks like we're about to have company. The first to emerge was the Shadow Maw, a creature that looked like someone had taken a wolf, fed it nothing but steroids and nightmares for several years, then given it the ability to phase partially out of reality. It materialized in the arena, with a sound like tearing fabric, its form shifting between solid and something that hurt to look at directly. The crowd perked up. Now, this was more like it. The Shadow Maw opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to extend into dimensions that probably violated several laws of physics, and let out a howl that made every piece of glass in the arena vibrate ominously. Bennett saw the scene in the center of the arena and stopped mid-howl. The Void Ripper was now lying on its side, like the world's most dangerous house pet, while Mr. Whiskers had somehow climbed onto its head and was kneading the scales behind its ears. The Void Ripper's 6 eyes were half closed in what could only be described as bliss. The Shadow Maw tilted its head in confusion, phased back into full reality, and approached cautiously. Mr. Whiskers looked up, gave the newcomer a slow blink of acknowledgement, and made a small meow sound. The Shadow Maw immediately flopped down next to the Void Ripper and began panting like an enormous reality-bending puppy. "Oh, come on," screamed a Plutonian in the stands. "I paid 3,000 credits for this." But the show wasn't over yet. The Bone Crusher burst through its gate like a living avalanche, all 12 tons of crystalline muscle and predatory intent. This creature was pure function over form, built like a tank that had decided to grow teeth and develop anger management issues. Its roar shook dust from the arena's ceiling and caused 3 smaller alien species to immediately faint. It charged toward the center of the arena, clearly intending to restore some dignity to this farce through the ancient art of ultra-violence. It made it about halfway before spotting Mr. Whiskers, who had now moved to giving the Shadow Maw chin scratches. The Bone Crusher skidded to a halt, leaving 4 deep furrows in the sand, and stared at the unprecedented scene before it. Mr. Whiskers looked up at the new arrival and chirped a friendly greeting. The Bone Crusher's aggressive posture melted away like ice cream in a supernova. It shuffled forward hesitantly, then carefully lowered its massive head to sniff the small orange cat. Mr. Whiskers bonked it gently with his forehead. The Bone Crusher made a sound like a contented landslide and settled down to complete the growing cuddle pile. "This is impossible," Vexstar was now standing on his desk, all 6 arms gesticulating wildly. Arena Control, release the Stellar Devourer immediately, and while you're at it, check our insurance policy. The final gate opened with a hydraulic hiss, and out came something that defied easy description. The Stellar Devourer was less a creature and more a cosmic phenomenon that had learned to walk. It shifted between states of matter seemingly at random, sometimes solid, sometimes energy, sometimes something that made physicists weep. When it moved, reality rippled around it like water. This was the arena's ultimate weapon, a being that had once actually eaten a small moon just to prove it could. The alien crowd fell silent. Even they knew this was overkill. The Stellar Devourer surveyed the arena with senses that operated on spectrums of existence most beings couldn't even perceive. It detected the 3 other death beasts, the confused human, and a small orange cat who was now somehow simultaneously petting all 3 massive predators while purring loudly enough to be heard over the arena's sound system. The Stellar Devourer approached, its form stabilizing into something roughly cat-like but made of what appeared to be concentrated starlight. It leaned down toward Mr. Whiskers with the kind of cautious reverence usually reserved for approaching deities. Mr. Whiskers looked up at this cosmic entity and did what cats do best. He completely ignored how impressive it was supposed to be and headbutted it directly, in what might have been its nose. The Stellar Devourer made a sound like a quasar having an emotional breakthrough and immediately curled up around the entire group, forming a protective barrier of living stellar energy around the world's most effective therapy cat. Jake, who had been calmly observing this entire sequence while working on a second sandwich, finally stood up and brushed the sand off his jumpsuit. "You know," he said into the stunned silence, "this is exactly why I went into xenobiology. Most people think alien life is all about conquest and territorial disputes, but really, most creatures just want the same things we do: safety, companionship, maybe a good meal and someone to scratch behind their ears." The arena had become completely silent except for a harmony of purring, rumbling, and what sounded like cosmic background radiation expressing contentment. "I paid 15,000 credits for this," screamed a particularly irate Centaurian from the luxury boxes. "I want to see something die." "Refund," shouted another voice. "Refund, refund, refund." The chant began spreading through the stands like wildfire, or like the kind of angry mob that forms when people realize they've been spectacularly ripped off. Vexstar looked down at his control panel, then at the scene below, then at the increasingly hostile crowd. In his 2 decades as arena announcer, he had never faced a situation quite like this. His training had covered everything from contestant escape attempts to equipment malfunctions, but nobody had prepared him for therapeutic intervention by house cat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said weakly into his microphone, "due to technical difficulties, the arena will be offering full refunds at the customer service booth." The crowd's roar of outrage was so loud it probably registered on seismic equipment 3 star systems away. 3 hours later, after the riot police had been called, the arena evacuated, and approximately 47 lawsuits filed, Jake sat in the now empty arena with his unusual collection of new friends. Mr. Whiskers had somehow managed to arrange all 4 death beasts into an elaborate living furniture set, with the Void Ripper serving as a backrest, the Shadow Maw as a footstool, the Bone Crusher as an armrest, and the Stellar Devourer providing mood lighting. Arena Director Thraxius, a particularly bureaucratic species of crab person, approached Jake with a tablet full of legal documents and what appeared to be a migraine that transcended species barriers. "Mr. Murphy," Thraxius said, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone whose entire business model had just collapsed, "we need to discuss this situation." "Sure thing," Jake replied, scratching the Void Ripper behind what might have been ears. "Though I should mention, I really do need to get back to work soon. Those filtration systems don't maintain themselves." "Yes, about that." Thraxius consulted his tablet. "We've been in contact with your supervisor, Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, at the Terran Research Division. It seems there's been some additional confusion about your assignment." Jake paused mid-scratch. "Additional confusion?" "According to Dr. Hartwell, you weren't supposed to be studying Class-3 predators at all. Your actual assignment was to conduct preliminary behavioral research on something called," Thraxius squinted at his screen, "a Terran Felis domesticus telepathicus." "A what now?" Jake blinked. "Apparently Mr. Whiskers isn't just any cat. He's part of an extremely rare subspecies that developed on one of Earth's outer colonies. They're born with limited telepathic abilities specifically designed for cross-species emotional regulation." Jake stared down at Mr. Whiskers, who was now somehow managing to purr in harmony with 4 different cosmic predators while looking absolutely pleased with himself. "You mean to tell me," Jake said slowly, "that I've been carrying around a telepathic therapy cat for 6 months and nobody thought to mention this? The paperwork indicates that you were supposed to be briefed on this during your initial assignment meeting with Dr. Rodriguez," Thraxius said. "However, since Dr. Rodriguez was mistakenly sent to participate in our gladiatorial combat instead, she's probably wondering why nobody's shown up to fight her," Jake finished. "Yeah, that makes sense. Rodriguez always was better at the whole controlled violence thing anyway." A new voice crackled over the arena's intercom system. "Attention, Director Thraxius. This is Galactic Health and Safety Administration. We're shutting down this facility immediately." Thraxius went a shade of blue that roughly translated to career-ending panic. But the voice continued. "However, we're prepared to offer you a conditional operating license if you're willing to convert this facility into the galaxy's first interspecies therapeutic center. Our preliminary assessment suggests there's enormous demand for this kind of service." 6 months later, the former galactic combat arena had been transformed into something much more unusual, a place where beings actually came to feel better instead of watching others feel significantly worse. Jake had traded his maintenance jumpsuit for a therapist's coat, though he still carried the same lunchbox. His office was in the former gladiator prep room, complete with a sign that read, "Dr. Jake Murphy, Chief Xenobiological Therapist," in 17 different languages. Mr. Whiskers had his own office, naturally. It was the old champion's quarters, now equipped with the galaxy's most expensive cat furniture and a staff of former beast handlers whose new job was professional cat treat dispensers. The Void Ripper worked as the facility's head of security, though mostly this involved greeting nervous patients and demonstrating that even the scariest things could be friendly given the right circumstances. The Shadow Maw ran support groups for creatures with phase-shifting disorders. The Bone Crusher had discovered a talent for therapeutic massage, though clients had to sign extensive waivers first. The Stellar Devourer served as the facility's meditation guide, helping patients achieve states of cosmic peace that were technically impossible but happened anyway. And Vexstar? Well, Vexstar had found his true calling. "Welcome to today's session of Mindfulness in the Void," his voice echoed gently through the facility's main hall, all dramatic flair replaced with soothing tones. "Today we'll be exploring the healing power of accepting our cosmic insignificance while simultaneously celebrating our individual worth." In his private moments, Jake sometimes wondered what would have happened if the paperwork had been filed correctly. Dr. Rodriguez would probably have put on quite a show, and the arena would still be running gladiatorial combat for profit. But then Mr. Whiskers would headbutt his hand for attention, or he'd see the Void Ripper helping a nervous Andorian work through their anxiety issues, and he'd realize that sometimes the best things happen when everything goes completely wrong. Besides, the pay was better, the hours were reasonable, and he hadn't been nearly eaten by anything in months. For a xenobiologist, it was basically a dream job. And Mr. Whiskers? Well, Mr. Whiskers had finally found his true purpose, being the galaxy's most effective diplomatic weapon, one purr at a time. The universe was a much calmer place because of it.